Hello, my name is Napoli Yoshida, and today I will be presenting my marine ecology project on the humuhumunukunukuapua'a, also known as the reef triggerfish, and it's also the Hawaii state fish. And I'm going to be covering three main categories, their biology, habitat, and the threats that they face today. And yeah. So I'm going to start off with my thesis. So throughout my research, I've realized that the reef triggerfish are a keystone species that are crucial in regulating the populations of whatever ecosystems they inhabit. So therefore, their conservation is really important in preserving marine biodiversity as a whole. And so let's start off with their biology. So these fish are characterized by their diamond-shaped bodies, and you'll also notice that from the side they look really flat. They also have this thing called a dorsal spine, which will lock into place that allows them to hide in like little crevices in reefs to hide from their predators. They also have a broadened dorsal and anal fin, which I'll show you in the next slide, but this allows for optimal maneuverability. So even though these fish are really small and really grow up to be up to 10 inches in size, they're really good at navigating and just swimming through the waters, and their fins allow them to do so. As for diet, they love to feast on invertebrates such as sea urchins, brittle stars, mollusks, and small crustaceans. And it's actually interesting because I'll see these fish a lot when I go snorkeling in Hawaii, for example. And in the same waters, I saw a lot of sea urchin. And so it's really interesting to think that these small fish are able to eat these spiky creatures. And finally, they have this spitting and blowing technique. So another thing I noticed is that sometimes these fish would dive on the floor and kind of like spit out sand right after. And what they're actually doing here is they're launching onto their prey in the sand, and then they're spitting out any excess sand out of their mouths into the water. And so this actually looks really funny when they do it. But it can also act as a defense mechanism because if they notice any sort of danger or predators nearby, they can kind of use this spitting and blowing technique to scare their predators off. So here I've provided a diagram of their anatomy, or at least the important parts that I thought were um, might be helpful to kind of visualize. So first of all, I talked about their diamond shape. I kind of put a little shape here so you can see how it kind of mimics that shape. And so they're pretty easy to identify. They also have this distinct coloration. They can be orangish, yellow, green, black, white, blue, all these colors, and they have like these stripes and all and spots. You can also see their dorsal and anal fins and how they're a little bit broadened, which allow for them to move around in the water. So next, let's talk about their habitat. So I used to think that these fish were endemic to Hawaii. However, they can be found across the Indo-Pacific Ocean. For example, in Hawaii, the Society Islands, and the Tuamotu Archipelago. And they love to stay in shallower and more tropical waters, especially you'll see them in coral reefs. And they prefer depths from around the surface to around 50 meters deep. And finally, they also like to inhabit shallow lagoons, near shore areas, outer reefs, such as basalt reefs. And basalt reefs are basically geological formations or like these underwater structures made of volcanic rock, which I think is really interesting to add. And on the left here, you can see a picture of these vibrant coral reefs that they love to hang around in. All right, so let's talk about some threats that these fish face. Currently, they're not at too high of a risk for extinction or being endangered or anything, so I guess that's kind of good. However, they do experience some threats like a lot of other marine animals face. So first of all, habitat degradation, which kind of goes hand in hand with anthropogenic climate change. As we know, the reef triggerfish love to hang out in reefs, coral reefs specifically, mostly. And so, with coral bleaching caused by anthropogenic climate change, a lot of these habitats have either died out or bleached, and this kind of offsets the populations. In fact, to provide a little statistic from the EPA, there was a survey that was kind of done across Hawaii and its coral reefs, and it said that 80% of the dominant corals in Kaneohebe, Oahu were bleached in 2014 in a bleaching event in Hawaii. And so we can only imagine how much that has exacerbated in the last 11 years. And now I actually love to go snorkeling in Hawaii and to see that every single year these corals are becoming even more and more deteriorated, and bleach is very sad to see. Additionally, there's pollution. So, again, like many other marine ecosystems, these fish fall victim to a lot of pollution, like plastic pollution, including microplastics. And this is very harmful because a lot of times these fish can't tell the difference between plastic and food. And also, uh, as we go up the food chain, more fish are going to consume more of the microplastics in their prey. And finally, we have fishing practices. So, a lot of illegal fish trade, also capturing them for aquariums, and unsustainable fishing practices have made them more susceptible to these harms, and we risk losing a lot of these populations. So finally, why are they so crucial? So kind of circling back to my thesis from earlier, they are considered a keystone species in many ecosystems, such as coral reef ecosystems. So let's talk about this. So their prey include sea urchins, starfish, and crustaceans, like I mentioned before, which allow them to indirectly control algal blooms. So by kind of keeping these populations in check, they're able to monitor the growth of algae indirectly. It's not like they're actually grazing on the algae, but it's kind of an indirect impact. And then again, with the predators like the amberjacks, groupers, and sharks feeding on them as well, if these fish went extinct or if their populations deteriorated, this would result in a trophic cascade. Um, as well as these prey sort of overpopulating, and then this would offset a lot of the food webs within the ecosystem, and so just be really chaotic. So yeah, these colorful small fish, although they're very tiny, they make a big impact in these ecosystems. And these are my references, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.